September 3rd, 1260. Dawn breaks over the hills of northern Palestine. A man stands alone on the summit of Mount Gilboa, his silhouette sharp against the brightening eastern sky. His name is Baybars, 32 years old, a general who commands 2,000 cavalry, a free man who was born a slave. The morning air carries the scent of wild thyme and dust. Below him, the Jezreel Valley spreads like a map drawn by God himself. 30 miles of open ground stretching toward the Mediterranean, fertile, ancient, soaked in the blood of armies that have fought here since the time of pharaohs. But Baybars is not looking at the valley floor. His eyes are fixed on something else, something moving on the northern horizon, a dark line, growing, spreading across the landscape like oil spilled on water, an army, the largest, most disciplined, most terrifying military force the medieval world has ever seen. 15,000 cavalry, veterans who have conquered from the Pacific Ocean to the gates of Vienna, men who have never been permanently defeated in battle. The Mongols are coming, and they believe victory is inevitable. Baybars presses his palm against the limestone rock beneath his feet. The stone is rough, porous, full of tiny holes and sharp edges. He closes his eyes for a moment and feels the texture. This rock, this simple, unremarkable Palestinian limestone. This is his secret weapon. In 3 hours, he will face an enemy that has destroyed kingdoms, burned cities, and left millions dead in their wake. In 3 hours, his small cavalry force will stand between the Mongol horde and the last independent Muslim power in the Middle East. In 3 hours, the world will learn that even the greatest empire has limits. But first, we need to go back 2 years. Back to the moment when the impossible became inevitable. February 10th, 1258, the city of Baghdad. For 500 years, this city has stood as the jewel of the Islamic world, home to the House of Wisdom, where scholars from 3 continents gather to study mathematics, astronomy, medicine, philosophy. The Abbasid Caliphate rules from this magnificent metropolis, and its caliph is considered the spiritual leader of millions of Muslims from Spain to India. The city's libraries hold hundreds of thousands of books, manuscripts, treatises, centuries of accumulated human knowledge bound in leather and ink. Then the Mongols arrive. Hulagu Khan, 40 years old, grandson of Genghis Khan. He leads an army estimated at over 100,000 men toward Baghdad's walls. The caliph makes a catastrophic miscalculation. His name is al-Mustasim, and he believes 3 things. First, that his city's walls are impregnable. Second, that his prestige as the leader of Islam will protect him. Third, that perhaps God will intervene. He is wrong on all counts. When Baghdad falls after a 13-day siege, the Mongols spend a week systematically destroying everything that made the city great. They throw books into the Tigris River, so many books that witnesses will later write that the water ran black with ink for weeks. Imagine that. The river of civilization turned to flowing darkness. They execute scholars, artists, scientists, anyone whose knowledge might threaten Mongol supremacy. They kill so many people that modern historians still cannot agree on the number. Hundreds of thousands, perhaps 1 million souls. The caliph himself is rolled in a carpet and trampled to death by horses. Mongol superstition forbids spilling royal blood directly on the ground, so they find creative solutions. Think about that for a moment. Really think about it. The center of Islamic civilization. A city that has stood longer than any European capital. A place where algebra was invented, where optics were studied, where the works of Aristotle were preserved when Europe had forgotten them. Erased in 7 days. And the Mongols move on as if they have simply checked another box on their list of world conquest. Now, I know what you are thinking. This sounds like every other story of conquest and destruction. Armies invade, cities fall, empires rise and fall like tides. But here is what you need to understand. Baghdad was not special. This was standard operating procedure. From 1206, when Genghis Khan united the Mongol tribes, until 1260, the Mongols have conquered the largest contiguous land empire in human history. Let me give you the numbers. The scope. The sheer impossibility of what they have achieved. They defeated the Jin dynasty in China, a civilization with advanced siege weapons, gunpowder, and a population of 50 million people. Gone. They obliterated the Khwarezmian Empire in Central Asia, an empire that stretched from the Caspian Sea to India. Its armies numbered in the hundreds of thousands. They scattered like dust. They smashed through Russia like a hammer through glass. Princes, boyars, entire armies destroyed at the Kalka River in 1223. Of 80,000 Russians who started that battle, only a tiny fraction survived. They invaded Poland and Hungary, terrifying all of Europe. They reached the outskirts of Vienna. Christian kings prepared for the end of days. And now, in 1260, they control everything from Korea to the Mediterranean Sea. How? What is their secret? The answer is not what you expect. It is not superior courage. Every medieval army had brave men willing to die. It is not superior strategy, though their tactics were brilliant. It is not even superior numbers. The Mongols were often outnumbered. The secret is horses. Now, before you roll your eyes and think this is obvious, let me explain. Because the Mongol relationship with horses is fundamentally different from anything Europe or the Middle East has ever seen. A European knight rides a horse. A Mongol warrior lives on horseback. From the time a Mongol boy can walk, he is learning to ride. By adolescence, he can shoot a bow accurately while riding at full gallop. He can sleep in the saddle. He can navigate by the stars while mounted. The medieval Persian historian Juzjani wrote that Mongols were so comfortable on horseback that they appeared to be a single creature, like the centaurs of Greek mythology. But here is the real genius of their system. Every Mongol cavalryman brings 3 to 4 horses with him on campaign. Some sources suggest as many as 7 remounts each. Do the mathematics. 15,000 Mongol cavalry, each with 3 horses. That is, 45,000 horses moving as one organism. While a European knight rides one exhausted horse, the Mongol is constantly switching to fresh mounts. A Mongol army can cover 60 miles in a single day, twice the distance of a typical medieval army. They can appear where they are thought to be impossible, strike with devastating force, disappear before reinforcements arrive. The Mongol horse itself is perfectly adapted to this lifestyle. Unlike the large European war horses or the sleek Arabian steeds, the Mongol pony is small and stocky, standing only about 4.5 feet tall at the shoulder. But what it lacks in size, it makes up for in toughness. These horses can survive on minimal fodder, grazing on whatever sparse grass they can find. They can endure temperature extremes from blazing summer heat to 40 degrees below zero in Siberian winters. And here is a detail that sounds almost too bizarre to be true, but is well documented in primary sources. When necessary, a Mongol warrior can make a small incision in his horse's neck, drink some of its blood for nourishment, then seal the wound and keep riding. The Persian chronicler Ata Malik Juvaini recorded that a Mongol horseman could ride 10 days without eating cooked food, sustaining himself on horse blood and mare's milk. This eliminates the need for a slow-moving supply train. No vulnerable baggage to protect. No logistical tail slowing them down. Think about the strategic implications. A European army needs to follow roads because it has heavy supply wagons. They need to stay near cities because they require provisions. They move slowly, predictably, and can be easily tracked. The Mongols can cross deserts, traverse mountains, appear in places where an army should not be able to exist. They are the closest thing the medieval world has to a modern rapid deployment force, highly mobile, self-sufficient, capable of striking anywhere at any time. Their tactics are equally revolutionary. The Mongol army is organized with mathematical precision into units of 10, 100, 1,000, and 10,000 warriors. This decimal system allows for complex battlefield maneuvers that would be impossible for the feudal armies of Europe or the Middle East. A typical Mongol battle strategy goes like this. Light cavalry armed with powerful composite bows harass the enemy from a distance, raining arrows down while staying just out of reach. When the enemy charges to engage, the Mongols execute their famous feigned retreat. They turn and flee, appearing to be routed, drawing the enemy into pursuit. The enemy, thinking they have won, breaks formation to chase down the fleeing Mongols, and that is when the trap springs. The retreating Mongols suddenly wheel around, firing arrows backward from their saddles using a technique called the Parthian shot. Meanwhile, heavy Mongol cavalry hidden nearby charge into the now disorganized enemy flanks. Mongol horse archers circle the enemy formation, shooting from all sides while always staying mobile enough to avoid counterattack. It is devastating, and it works against everyone. Chinese pikemen, European knights, Muslim cavalry. No one has found a permanent answer. By 1260, this strategy has worked for over 50 years. No one has found a way to permanently stop them. Sure, there have been tactical defeats. The Mongols lose some battles, but they always come back stronger, always learn from their mistakes, always ultimately crush whoever opposes them. After Baghdad falls, the Mongols turn west into Syria. Damascus, one of the oldest continuously inhabited cities in the world, opens its gates without a fight in March of 1260. The Christian Armenian kingdom of Cilicia and the Crusader Principality of Antioch have already submitted to Mongol authority. They are providing auxiliary troops. The Mongols now control everything from Korea to the Mediterranean Sea. Only one major Muslim power remains, the Mamluk Sultanate of Egypt, and the Mongols fully intend to add it to their collection. Now, to understand who the Mamluks are and why they choose to fight rather than surrender, we need to talk about one of the strangest institutions in medieval Islamic society. The word Mamluk literally means owned or slave in Arabic. The Mamluks are enslaved boys, typically captured from the Turkic peoples of Central Asia or from the Caucasus region. These boys, usually between 8 and 12 years old, are purchased by Muslim rulers and brought to Egypt, where they undergo an extraordinary transformation. They are enrolled in what amounts to a military academy. For years, sometimes decades, they train horseback riding, archery, swordsmanship, wrestling. They learn to fire arrows with deadly accuracy while riding at full gallop. They study tactics and strategy. They memorize the Quran and convert to Islam. They form bonds with their fellow trainees that last their entire lives. And here is the twist that seems contradictory to modern ears. Despite being technically enslaved, Mamluks enjoy high social status. The most talented can rise to become generals, governors, or even sultans. In fact, in 1250, the Mamluks overthrew their Ayyubid masters in Egypt and established their own sultanate. The slaves became the rulers, but they never forgot where they came from. Never forgot the harsh training, the bonds of brotherhood, the absolute discipline that had been drilled into them since childhood. In many ways, they are the perfect mirror image of the Mongols. Warriors who grew up on horseback, who understand steppe warfare, who fight as disciplined units rather than glory-seeking individuals. In 1260, the Mamluk Sultan is a man named Qutuz, 45 years old. His story is remarkable in its own right. He was born a prince in Central Asia, but when the Mongols destroyed his homeland, he was captured and sold into slavery. He worked his way up through the Mamluk system through sheer competence and ruthlessness, eventually seizing power in Egypt in 1259. So when Hulagu's envoys arrive in Cairo with a letter demanding Egypt's surrender, this is not just a political decision for Qutuz, this is personal. Hulagu's letter is worth quoting because it perfectly captures the Mongol psychology of inevitable conquest. From the King of Kings of the East and West, the Great Khan. You should think of what happened to other countries and submit to us. You have heard how we have conquered a vast empire and have purified the earth of the disorders that tainted it. We have conquered vast areas, massacring all the people. You cannot escape from the terror of our armies. Where can you flee? What road will you use to escape us? Our horses are swift, our arrows sharp, our swords like thunderbolts, our hearts as hard as the mountains, our soldiers as numerous as the sand. Fortresses will not detain us, nor armies stop us. Your prayers to God will not avail against us. Submit to our orders, or face total destruction. Kutuz reads this letter aloud to his council. Some advisors urge surrender. After all, has not everyone else who resisted the Mongols been destroyed? Is not submission the only logical choice? Egypt is wealthy, yes, but can it really stand against the horde that has conquered half the world? Kutuz's response is to have the Mongol envoys executed, their heads mounted on the Bab Zuwayla gate of Cairo for all to see. It is a declaration of war in the most brutal terms possible. There will be no submission, no negotiation, no compromise. Either Egypt will stand or it will fall fighting. Now, this seems like madness, right? This seems like the kind of hot-headed decision that gets entire civilizations destroyed. But Kutuz knows something that his advisors do not fully appreciate. He knows that the Mongols, for all their might, are not at full strength. In 1259, the great Khan Mongke died while campaigning in China. This triggered a succession crisis back in Mongolia. Mongol law requires all the royal princes to return to Karakorum, the Mongol capital, to elect the new Great Khan. Hulagu Khan departed Syria in late 1259, taking the bulk of his massive army with him. Some estimates suggest he took over 100,000 men back east. He left behind only a rearguard force under his most trusted general, a Nestorian Christian Turk named Kitbuka, 58 years old, a veteran of 100 battles. Estimates of Kitbuka's force vary wildly in medieval sources, but modern historians believe he has somewhere between 10,000 and 20,000 Mongol cavalry, plus auxiliary troops from Georgia, Armenia, and Syria. This is still a formidable army. These are Mongol veterans who have conquered from Baghdad to Damascus. But it is a fraction of the force that has terrified the Muslim world for the past 2 years. Kutuz sees his window of opportunity. If he moves fast, he can face Kitbuka's rear guard before Hulagu can return with reinforcements. It is a calculated gamble, but it is the only gamble that offers any hope. He assembles an army of about 20,000 Mamluk cavalry, along with auxiliary forces of Bedouin tribesmen and other volunteers. But he needs one more thing. He needs someone who understands how to beat the Mongols, someone who knows their tactics, someone who has fought them before and survived. He needs Baybars. Baybars, 32 years old, born to a Kipchak Turkic family in Central Asia, sold into slavery as a boy of 13. He has light eyes. Some sources say blue, others say gray. In a world where most warriors have dark eyes, this makes him instantly recognizable. Some say it makes him look like a wolf. Others say it makes him look cursed. He does not care what they say. For 19 years, he has trained in the Mamluk system, horseback, archery, swordsmanship. He is good at all of them. Better than good. Exceptional. But his real talent is something else, something the other Mamluks do not fully appreciate. Baybars understands terrain. Years earlier, when he had fallen out of favor with the previous Mamluk Sultan, he fled Egypt and spent time as a fugitive in Syria and Palestine. For months, he wandered through the very region where the battle will take place. He knows the hills, the valleys, the springs, the narrow passes. He knows where cavalry can maneuver and where they cannot. He knows the secret. When Kutuz summons him to the palace in Cairo, Baybars knows what is coming. They meet in a private chamber, just the two of them, the Sultan and the general. Kutuz speaks first. "I executed Hulagu's envoys." Baybars nods slowly. Then we fight. Can we win? Baibars does not answer immediately. He walks to the window and looks out at the city. Cairo, one of the great cities of the world. Soon it might look like Baghdad. How many men does Kitbuka have? Baibars asks. Our scouts estimate 15,000 Mongol cavalry, plus auxiliaries. And Hulagu? Gone, back to Mongolia. He took the bulk of his army. Baibars turns back to face the Sultan. Then we have a chance. What kind of chance? The kind that depends on rocks. Kutuz frowns. Explain. Baibars pulls out a map, hand-drawn, crude but detailed. The Jezreel Valley, northern Palestine. The Mongols have conquered the world on horseback, Baibars says, but their horses were made for the steppes of Mongolia. Soft ground, grassland. They have conquered China, Russia, Persia, all on terrain their horses understand. And? Syria is not the steppes. Palestine is not grassland. Baibars taps the map. The ground here is limestone, rocky, sharp. The Mongol ponies do not have iron shoes. Their hooves will crack, chip, bruise. Every mile they travel on this ground, their horses get slower. Kutuz leans forward. You are certain? I spent 6 months wandering these hills. I saw it happen to my own horse before I learned to shoe him properly. The Mongols do not shoe their horses because they have never needed to. On the steppes, the soft ground keeps their hooves hard and healthy. But on rocky terrain, unshod hooves break down fast. And our horses? We shoe them, iron nails. Our horses can run on rocks all day without damage. Kutuz stares at the map. You are telling me we can beat the Mongols because we put iron on our horses' feet and they do not? It is not just the shoes, Baibars says. It is everything. The Mongols bring multiple horses per warrior, 3, 4, sometimes more. They switch constantly to keep them fresh. But here is the problem. He points to the map again. Those horses need grass, a lot of grass. I estimate Kitbuka has at least 45,000 horses with his 15,000 cavalry. Each horse needs about 9 pounds of grass per day. Kutuz does the mathematics in his head. That is over 400,000 pounds of grass per day. Correct. And Syria does not have that much grass. Not in one place. Not sustainably. The Mongols are used to endless grassland. Here they will be constantly foraging, constantly moving to find grazing. Their horses will be hungry, tired, working harder with less food. While our horses are bred here, adapted to this climate, eating grain we bring with us. Kutuz sits back in his chair. For the first time since reading Hulagu's letter, he allows himself a small smile. So the great Mongol war machine has a weakness. Every machine has a weakness, Baibars says. The Mongols have built theirs around a specific environment. Take them out of that environment and they are still dangerous, still skilled, but not invincible. Where do we fight them? Baibars points to a spot on the map. Here, Ain Jalut, Goliath's Spring. The Jezreel Valley narrows there. Hills on both sides, rocky, forested, perfect for an ambush. You want to use their own tactic against them, Kutuz says. The feigned retreat. Exactly. I take a small force onto the valley floor, provoke them, draw them deeper into the valley. You hide the main army in the hills. When they are fully committed, you attack from 3 sides. They will be trapped between the hills on ground that hurts their horses and helps ours. Kutuz studies the map for a long moment. It is a good plan, he finally says. But it only works if Kitbuka takes the bait. If he suspects a trap, he will not commit his full force. He will take the bait, Baibars says with certainty. The Mongols have never been permanently defeated. They have fought for 50 years and won every time. Kitbuka has no reason to suspect we can beat him. He will see my small force and think we are making a desperate stand. He will want to crush us quickly and move on to Cairo. And if you are wrong, then we die fighting, Baibars says simply. But if we do nothing, we die anyway. At least this way, we choose our ground. Kutuz nods slowly. When do we march? Immediately, before Kitbuka moves south, before Hulagu returns from Mongolia. We have a window, but it is closing. The Sultan stands, walks to Baibars, places a hand on his shoulder. "You have my authority. Assemble the army, we march north." As Baibars turns to leave, Kutuz speaks again. "One more thing. If we win this battle, if we somehow defeat the Mongols, I will give you Syria to govern. You will be more than a general. You will be a prince." Baibars looks back at the Sultan. Their eyes meet. "And if we lose?" "Then none of it matters." Baibars leaves the palace and begins preparing for war. He has 3 weeks to assemble an army, march 150 miles, and defeat an enemy that has conquered half the world. The clock is ticking. And somewhere to the north, Kitbuka is preparing to march south. The collision is inevitable now. 2 armies, 2 generals, 1 valley, only one will leave alive. July 15, 1260. The Mamluk army marches north from Cairo. 20,000 cavalry, support troops, supplies, a column stretching for miles across the desert. Baibars rides at the vanguard. Behind him, the sound of 40,000 hooves on sand, the rhythmic thunder of an army on the move. They travel fast, 60 miles in 3 days. Then they reach the border of a land controlled by their oldest enemies, the Crusader states. For 60 years, Mamluks and Crusaders have killed each other over control of the Holy Land. Countless battles, sieges, raids, blood feuds that span generations. Now Baibars must ask these same Crusaders for help. The irony is not lost on him. The fortress of Acre rises from the Mediterranean coast like a stone fist. Massive walls, towers that have withstood siege after siege, home to the Knights Templar, the Hospitallers, and what remains of the Crusader dream. Baibars and Kutuz approach with a small delegation. 10 men, no weapons visible, though daggers are hidden beneath their robes. The Crusader commander who meets them is named Julian de Maison, 63 years old, a veteran of the 7th Crusade. His face is weathered leather. His eyes are the pale blue of winter ice. He stands on the ramparts of Acre and looks down at the Muslim delegation. For a long moment, no one speaks. Then Julian descends the stairs and walks through the gate, alone, unarmed. It is a show of courage, or perhaps contempt. He stops 10 paces from Kutuz. "I know why you are here," Julian says in accented Arabic. "The Mongols." "You have heard?" Kutuz asks. "We have scouts. We know Kitbuka is marching south. We know Damascus fell without a fight. We know Baghdad is gone." Julian pauses. "We also know you executed Hulagu's envoys." "We did. That was either very brave or very stupid. Perhaps both," Kutuz admits. Julian looks at Baibars, studies him. "You were the one who raided our supply caravans 3 years ago, killed 16 of my men near Jaffa." Baibars meets his gaze. "I was following orders. And now you come asking for help." "Not help," Baibars says. "Permission. We ask only to pass through your territory unmolested, to establish supply bases near your borders, nothing more. And in return, we fight the Mongols. We win or we die. Either way, you benefit." Julian considers this. "You think you can beat them?" "We think we have to try." The Crusader commander turns and looks north, toward Syria, toward the approaching storm. 4 months ago, Julian says quietly, Kitbuka's forces sacked Sidon, a Crusader city. They killed the garrison, burned the churches. It was a demonstration, a message: submit or die. He looks back at Kutuz. "We thought about submitting. The Pope is far away. Reinforcements are not coming. We are the last Crusaders in the Holy Land, and we are dying slowly." "And now?" Kutuz asks. "Now we realize something. If Egypt falls, we are next. The Mongols do not distinguish between Muslim and Christian. They only distinguish between those who submit and those who resist." Julian extends his hand, not for a handshake, for something else. He draws a knife from his belt, a small blade. He cuts his palm. Blood wells up, dark red against pale skin. "An old custom," he says, "from my grandfather's time." Kutuz understands. He takes the knife and cuts his own palm, They clasp hands. Blood mingles, Muslim and Christian, enemies becoming allies against a greater threat. You may pass through our lands, Julian says. You may establish supply bases at Tiberias and Jenin. We will not attack you. We will not hinder you. But understand this. He tightens his grip. When you face Kitbuka, you face him alone. We will not fight beside you. We cannot afford to anger the Mongols directly. If you win, we celebrate quietly. If you lose, we deny we ever helped you. Agreed, Kutuz says. They release hands. The pact is sealed. As the Mamluks turn to leave, Julian speaks again. Baibars. The general stops. The men you killed at Jaffa, one of them was my nephew, 18 years old. Baibars says nothing. I tell you this, Julian continues, so you understand. I am not helping you because I like you. I am not helping you because I forgive you. I am helping you because the Mongols are a plague that will consume us all if they are not stopped. I understand. Do you? Julian's eyes are hard. Win this battle, not for Allah, not for your sultan. Win it because if you do not, everything we have built here, everything we have bled for, Muslim and Christian alike, will be ash and memory. Baibars nods once. Then he mounts his horse and rides back to the army. That night, alone in his tent, Baibars thinks about Julian's nephew, 18 years old, probably eager, probably thought he would live forever. Baibars does not remember the boy's face. He killed many men at Jaffa. It was war. It was necessary. But now, preparing for another battle, he wonders, how many nephews will die at Ain Jalut? How many sons? How many men who thought they would live forever? He pushes the thought away. This is not the time for doubt. Behind him, Julian watches from the walls of Acre, two enemies who cannot trust each other, but who cannot afford to remain enemies. This is the mathematics of survival. The Mamluk army continues north, through Crusader territory, unmolested. It is surreal. Soldiers who have fought each other for decades now passing within sight of each other's fortifications without raising weapons. At night they camp near the Sea of Galilee. Baibars stands at the water's edge and looks across the dark surface. Somewhere beyond those hills, Kitbuka is camped, waiting, confident. Kutuz approaches. The Sultan is exhausted. The weight of command is visible in the lines around his eyes. You are troubled, Kutuz says. I am thinking about logistics, Baibars replies. Always logistics. Explain. Baibars picks up a stone and tosses it into the water. Ripples spread in perfect circles. The Mongols are the most efficient military force the world has ever seen, he says. But efficiency has limits, and those limits are mathematical. He turns to face the Sultan. Let me show you the science of how empires fall. They return to the command tent, maps spread across a table, candles casting flickering shadows. Baibars begins to sketch numbers on a piece of parchment. Kitbuka has, by our best estimates, 15,000 Mongol cavalry. Each warrior brings 3 horses minimum, some bring more. Let us be conservative and say 3. He writes, 15,000 times 3 equals 45,000 horses. Each horse needs approximately 9 pounds of grass per day to maintain fighting condition, more if they are working hard. He writes, 45,000 times 9 equals 405,000 pounds of grass per day. Kutuz stares at the number. That is impossible. It is possible on the Mongolian steppes, Baibars says, because the steppes are endless grassland. A Mongol army can spread out over miles. Horses graze constantly. They move from area to area. The grass regenerates behind them. He points to the map of Syria. But Syria is not Mongolia. Syria is semi-arid. It has grassland, yes, but scattered, limited. A horse herd of 45,000 animals needs roughly 8 square miles of good grazing land every single day. And if they do not have it, then the horses weaken. They lose weight. They become slower, more prone to injury, less able to execute the rapid maneuvers that make Mongol cavalry so deadly. Baibars pulls out another piece of parchment. On it, he has drawn a detailed sketch of a horse's hoof. Now let me show you the second problem. The one the Mongols do not even know they have. He taps the drawing. A Mongol pony's hoof is adapted to soft ground, grassland, dirt. The hoof is hard, yes, but it wears down naturally against soft surfaces. This constant, gentle abrasion keeps the hoof tough and healthy. He picks up a piece of limestone from the tent floor. But this is what Palestinian ground looks like. Limestone, basalt in some areas, sharp, porous, full of tiny edges like miniature knives. Baybars runs the stone across the parchment. It leaves a rough, torn mark. This is what happens to an unshod hoof on rocky terrain. The hoof wall cracks, chips, the sole bruises. After a few miles, the horse is limping. After 10 miles, the horse is lame. And our horses? Baybars pulls a horseshoe from a saddlebag. Iron, curved, nail holes along the edges. We shoe our horses, have for generations. This iron protects the hoof from the rocks. Our horses can gallop on limestone all day and suffer no damage. Kutuz picks up the horseshoe, feels its weight. Such a simple thing. A curved piece of iron. You're telling me, the Sultan says slowly, that we can defeat the greatest cavalry force in history because we put iron on our horses' feet and they do not? It is not just the iron, Baybar says. It is the accumulation of disadvantages, weak grass, rocky ground, horses that are tired, hungry, and sore-footed. None of these things alone would stop the Mongols, but together? He looks at Kutuz. Together they create an opportunity, a narrow window where the invincible become merely dangerous. The Sultan is quiet for a long moment. There is one more thing, Baybar says, a weapon the Mongols have never encountered. The next morning, Baybars assembles a group of Egyptian engineers, 6 men who have worked with mining operations in the Sinai. They bring with them 20 wooden crates. Open them, Baybars orders. The crates are pried open. Inside are metal tubes, each about 3 feet long, one end sealed, the other end open. They look like primitive cannons. Midfa, one of the engineers explains. Fire tubes. We use them in mining to crack rock faces. Pack the sealed end with gunpowder. Insert a fuse. Light it. The explosion shatters stone. Baybars picks one up. Heavy, crude, but functional. Can they kill a man? He asks. At close range, yes. We can pack them with metal fragments, stones, but they are not accurate. The tube is not rifled. The projectiles scatter. I do not need them to kill men, Baybar says. I need them to terrify horses. The engineer frowns. Terrify? The Mongols train their war horses to ignore many things. The screams of wounded men, the clash of steel, the smell of blood. But they have never trained them for one thing. Baybar sets the midfa down carefully. Explosions. Loud, sudden, accompanied by smoke and fire, a sound and spectacle unlike anything in nature. Understanding dawns on the engineer's face. You want to use the sound, not the projectiles. Exactly. Can you prepare 50 of these tubes? Pack them with extra powder for maximum noise and smoke? Yes, but it will take time. You have 4 days, Baybar says. After that, we fight. The engineers get to work. That night they test one midfa in a secluded valley. Baybars watches as the engineer lights the fuse. 5 seconds of sizzling. Then the explosion. The sound is tremendous. A sharp crack that echoes off the valley walls like thunder. Smoke billows from the tube in a thick black cloud. Nearby, Mamluk horses shift nervously but hold their positions. They are accustomed to loud noises, battle-trained. But there are also 2 Mongol horses in the camp, captured months ago during a border skirmish. Baybars watches them carefully. When the midfa fires, both Mongol horses rear violently. One breaks its tether and bolts into the darkness. The other bucks so hard its handler is thrown to the ground. Baybar smiles. Prepare all 50 tubes, he tells the engineer. Position them in the hills overlooking Ain Jalut. Space them out. I want the Mongols to think they are surrounded by explosions. It will work? It will create chaos, Baybar says. and in chaos the side that knows the ground wins. September 1st, 1260. The Mamluk army reaches the Jezreel Valley. Baibars rides ahead with scouts. They climb Mount Gilboa and look down at the valley floor. It is perfect. The valley stretches out before them. Open ground in the center. Good cavalry country. The kind of terrain where Mongol tactics would normally dominate. But on all sides, hills. Mount Gilboa to the south, the hills of Lower Galilee to the north, Mount Tabor looming to the northeast. These hills are covered with trees, rocks, gullies, perfect concealment for an army. And in the center of the valley, where the hills close in to form the narrowest passage, there is a spring. Ain Jalut, Goliath's spring. Local legend says this is where the biblical David defeated Goliath thousands of years ago. Baibars does not know if the story is true, but he appreciates the symbolism. An underdog, facing a giant, winning through intelligence rather than strength. He turns to his scouts. This is where we make our stand. Send word to the Sultan. Bring the army forward. We have 2 days to prepare. The scouts ride off. Baibars remains on the hilltop, looking down at the killing ground. In 2 days, 15,000 Mongol cavalry will ride into this valley. They will see open ground and think it favors them. They will not realize until too late that the hills are full of enemies. By then it will be too late. September 2nd. The day before battle. The Mamluk army has positioned itself with precision. Kutuz commands the main force. 18,000 cavalry and infantry hidden in the hills and trees surrounding Ain Jalut. They are not camped in neat rows. They are scattered, dispersed among the rocks and vegetation. From a distance, the hills appear empty. Baibars has 2,000 cavalry with him on the valley floor. His mission is simple. Engage the Mongols, provoke them, then retreat. Lead them deeper into the valley, deeper into the trap. Everything depends on timing. Retreat too early and the Mongols will suspect deception. Retreat too late and his 2,000 men will be annihilated. The margin for error is razor thin. That night, Kutuz gathers his commanders in a cave hidden among the rocks. 20 men, veterans, hardened by years of combat. The Sultan's face is illuminated by a single oil lamp. His voice is steady but quiet. "Tomorrow some of you will die," he says without preamble. "Perhaps many of you, perhaps all of you. I will not lie and say otherwise." No one speaks. You know what we are facing. You know what happened to Baghdad, to Damascus, to every army that has stood against the Mongols for the past 50 years. Kutuz looks at each man in turn. But you also know what we are fighting for. This is not about glory. This is not about conquest. This is about survival. He pauses. Some of you left families in Cairo, wives, children, elderly parents. If we break here, if we run, those families will face what Baghdad's families faced. The lamp flickers. Shadows dance on the cave walls. The Mongols do not distinguish between soldiers and civilians. They do not take cities intact and rule them gently. They erase, they obliterate, they turn civilizations into dust. Kutuz's voice hardens. Tomorrow we stand between the Mongol horde and everything we love. Everything we have built, everything we are. He draws his sword. The blade catches the lamplight. We stand not because we are certain of victory. We stand because we cannot live with the alternative. We stand because our children deserve a world where they do not have to ask us, "Why did you not fight when you could?" The commanders rise. One by one they draw their own swords, 20 blades gleaming in the darkness. "For Egypt," Kutuz says. "For Egypt," they echo. The council disperses. The commanders return to their positions in the hills. Only Baibars remains. Kutuz sheathes his sword and looks at his general. "You understand what I am asking you to do tomorrow? Lead 2,000 men against 15,000. Make them angry enough to chase me. Stay alive long enough to lead them into your trap." "Yes." Baibars nods. "I understand. If the Mongols break through you too quickly, if they destroy your force before you can retreat, the plan fails. We will be trying to ambush an army that knows we are here. I will not fail. Kutuz studies him. You say that with certainty, but Kitbuka is no fool. He has fought 100 battles. He will be looking for deception. He will be looking for deception from an enemy who fears him, Baibars says. But I do not fear him. I fear failure. There is a difference. The Sultan places a hand on Baibar's shoulder. When this is over, when we have won, I will keep my promise. Syria will be yours to govern. You will be more than a general. You will be a prince of the realm. Baibars meets his eyes. Something flickers in those wolf-gray depths. Gratitude? Ambition? Something else? We should both survive first, Baibars says. Then we can discuss rewards. He turns to leave, then stops. One more thing, my Sultan. Tomorrow when you attack from the hills, remove your helmet. Kutuz frowns. That is suicide. I will be a target. You will be inspiration, Baibars says. The men need to see your face. They need to see that their Sultan is willing to die alongside them. It will make the difference between an army that fights and an army that conquers. You are asking me to make myself vulnerable. I am asking you to make yourself visible. There is a difference. Kutuz considers this, finally nods. I will do it. Baibars leaves the cave and walks alone through the hills. The moon is a thin crescent. The stars are brilliant. The air smells of wild herbs and dust. He finds a flat rock and sits. From his saddlebag he pulls out a piece of parchment and a small bottle of ink. He writes slowly, carefully. The letter is not addressed to anyone specific. Perhaps it is addressed to history, perhaps to God, perhaps to himself. Tonight I sleep as a slave who commands armies. Tomorrow I either die as a slave or prove that even slaves can defeat emperors. There is no middle path. If these words survive me, know that I chose to stand, not because I am brave, not because I am certain, but because I am a man, and men must sometimes stand in the face of impossible odds simply because there is no other choice that allows us to remain men. He folds the parchment and places it in a leather pouch. He will give it to a trusted subordinate in the morning. If he dies, perhaps someone will find it, perhaps not. It does not matter. What matters is tomorrow. Across the valley in the Mongol camp, Kitbuka sits with his officers. He is 58 years old, a veteran of more battles than he can count. He has served Hulagu Khan faithfully for decades, has helped conquer an empire. Now he has been left behind with a rearguard force while Hulagu returns to Mongolia. It is not an insult, it is a sign of trust. Guard the rear. Consolidate the conquered territories. Prepare for the next phase. But Kitbuka is restless. His scouts have reported that a Mamluk army has marched north from Egypt, 20,000 men. They are somewhere in the area, probably preparing to make a stand. Let them come, Kitbuka tells his officers. The sooner we crush them, the sooner we can march on Cairo. One of his subordinates, a cautious man named Temur, speaks up. My lord, the terrain here is different from what we are accustomed to. Rocky, hilly. Perhaps we should wait for more favorable ground. Kitbuka waves dismissively. We have fought in mountains, in deserts, in forests. Terrain does not matter when you have superior cavalry and superior tactics. But the Mamluks are not like other enemies. They are steppe warriors like us. They understand our methods. Then we will teach them that understanding tactics is not the same as defeating them. Kitbuka stands. Tomorrow we march south. If the Mamluks want to fight, we will oblige them. If they want to run, we will hunt them down. Either way, this ends quickly. His officers bow and leave. Kitbuka remains in his tent. He is confident. But he is also aware that something feels different about this campaign. The land is wrong. The grass is sparse. His horses are not as energetic as they should be. But these are minor concerns. Mongol cavalry has overcome worse difficulties. He goes to sleep certain that tomorrow will be another victory in a long string of victories. He is wrong. But he will not realize it until the trap closes around him. September 3rd, 1260. Dawn. Baibars stands on the summit of Mount Gilboa. The sun is just breaking over the horizon. The valley below is still in shadow. He can see them now, the Mongol army, a dark mass moving south, banners flying, the sound of thousands of hooves carrying across the morning air. They are coming. Baibars descends the hill and mounts his horse. Around him, 2,000 cavalry wait. Their faces are grim. They know what is about to happen. "Listen to me," Baibars says. His voice carries across the assembled riders. "In a few hours, you will face the army that has conquered the world. Some of you will die, but those who survive will be part of something greater than victory. You will be the men who prove that empires can fall, that the invincible can bleed, that intelligence matters more than strength." He draws his sword. "Today, we are the bait. We are the lure. We are the sacrifice that makes the trap work. It is not a glorious role, but it is the most important role. Without us, there is no ambush. Without us, there is no victory." He points toward the approaching Mongol horde. "So when they come, we fight. Not to win, not to die. We fight to lead them exactly where we want them. And when the Sultan springs the trap, when the hills erupt with our brothers, you will know that your courage bought their victory." The cavalry raises their swords. Baibars turns his horse toward the valley floor. The secret weapon is ready. The trap is set. The stage is prepared. Now comes the performance that will change history. The Mongols are coming. And beneath the rocky ground of Palestine, the earth itself waits to become a weapon. 7 o'clock in the morning. September 3rd, 1260. The Mongol army enters the Jezreel Valley. From his position on the valley floor, Baibars watches them come. 15,000 cavalry, Armenian auxiliaries, Georgian troops, Syrian warriors pressed into service. The morning sun is behind the Mongols. It shines directly into the eyes of Baibars and his 2,000 men. This is not an accident. Kitbuka has positioned his approach carefully. The sun blinds his enemies, standard Mongol tactics. But Baibars has positioned himself just as carefully. The sun may be in his eyes now, but in 2 hours, when the battle reaches its climax, the sun will have moved. The Mongols will be looking east, looking into the light, looking at hills they cannot quite see clearly. Details matter. Kitbuka rides at the head of his army. Even from a distance, Baibars can see him. A commander who sits differently in the saddle, who carries authority in his posture, 58 years old, a veteran of 100 battles, a man who has helped conquer an empire. Today, he will die on rocky ground far from his homeland. But he does not know this yet. Kitbuka raises his hand. The Mongol army halts. 15,000 horses stop moving as one organism. The discipline is impressive, terrifying. For a long moment, the two armies face each other across half a mile of open ground. Then Kitbuka gives the order. Light cavalry advances, 2,000 riders armed with composite bows. They move forward at a canter, not charging, probing. This is how Mongol battles begin. Send light cavalry to harass. Test the enemy's resolve. Look for weaknesses. Baibars signals his own cavalry. They advance to meet the Mongol screen. The first arrows fly. They whistle through the morning air. Some find targets. Men cry out. Horses scream. Blood is spilled on Palestinian dust. But this is not the real battle. This is the prelude. Baibars' cavalry engages for perhaps 10 minutes. Riding in, loosing arrows, wheeling away. Classic hit-and-run tactics. They are using Mongol methods against Mongols. And Kitbuka notices. From his command position, the Mongol general watches these Egyptian cavalry with growing interest. They fight like steppe warriors. They understand mounted archery. They know how to preserve their horses' energy while inflicting casualties. These are not the timid Arabs who fled from Damascus. These are real soldiers. Good. A real battle is more satisfying than a massacre. Kitbuka orders a stronger assault. 5,000 cavalry now. Heavy horse archers. They push forward with greater aggression. Baibars 2,000 are now badly outnumbered. They fight desperately. Men fall, horses collapse. The Mamluk line begins to buckle. This is the critical moment. Retreat too soon, and Kitbuka suspects a trap. Fight too long, and there is no army left to retreat. Baibars watches, calculates, waits. An arrow strikes the man next to him. The warrior topples from his saddle without a sound, dead before he hits the ground. Still Baibars waits. His cavalry is being pressed hard now. The Mongols are executing a textbook encirclement, wings spreading to envelope the Mamluk flanks. Now, Baibars raises his sword and signals the retreat. His cavalry turns and flees south. Down the valley, toward the narrow passage where the hills close in, toward Ain Jalut. To the Mongols, it looks exactly like what they expect. The enemy has put up a brave fight but is breaking under pressure. Now is the time to pursue, to destroy the fleeing army before it can regroup. Kitbuka gives the order, full pursuit. All cavalry, do not let them escape. The Mongol army surges forward, 15,000 horsemen thundering south. The ground shakes. The sound is like continuous thunder. They are magnificent, terrifying, a force of nature made flesh, and they are riding into a trap. Baibars leads his retreating cavalry down the valley at a carefully controlled pace. Not too fast. He needs the Mongols to stay close, to believe they are about to catch him. Behind him, he can hear them. The drumming of hooves, the battle cries in a dozen languages. Getting closer. The valley is narrowing now, hills rising on both sides, trees and rocks covering the slopes. In those hills, hidden among the trees and rocks, 18,000 Mamluk warriors wait. Kutuz watches from his concealed position on the eastern slope. He can see Baibars leading the Mongol army deeper into the valley. Closer, closer. The Sultan's hand rests on his sword hilt. His knuckles are white. Not yet. The Mongols are strung out now, a long column stretched across 2 miles of valley floor. Their formation has become loose, ragged. They are so focused on the chase that they have stopped watching the hills. Closer. The narrowest point of the valley approaches. Ain Jalut, the spring that gives this place its name. The ground here is only 200 yards wide. Hills press in from both sides. Baibars' cavalry reaches this choke point and keeps going. Mongol cavalry pours in after them, thousands of horses in a constricted space. Now, Kutuz removes his helmet. His commanders see this signal and pass it along. All across the hills, Mamluk warriors prepare to attack. The Sultan stands in his stirrups. Every soldier on the eastern slope can see his scarred face, his white hair, his expression of grim determination. He raises his sword high. "For Baghdad," he roars, "for Damascus, for Islam." And the hills explode with warriors. From 3 directions, 18,000 Mamluk cavalry and infantry pour down the slopes. The Mongols, caught in the narrow valley, suddenly find themselves surrounded. Enemies to the north, east, west. The trap has closed. Chaos erupts immediately. Mongol commanders try to reorganize, try to form defensive circles. But the ground is too narrow. Too many horses in too small a space. Warriors cannot maneuver, cannot execute their practiced tactics. And then, the Midfa fire. 50 thunder tubes positioned in the hills. They detonate in rapid sequence. Crack, crack, crack. The sound is tremendous, amplified by the valley walls. Each explosion echoes and re-echoes. It sounds like the sky is splitting open. Thick black smoke billows from the hillsides. The acrid smell of gunpowder fills the air. The Mongol horses panic. These are war horses, trained to ignore swords, trained to ignore screams, but they have never experienced anything like this. The sound, the smoke, the fire. Horses rear, buck, bolt. Riders are thrown. Warriors who have ridden since childhood suddenly find themselves on the ground, disoriented, vulnerable. The carefully disciplined Mongol formation disintegrates into chaos. And into this chaos charge the Mamluks. Kutuz leads the eastern assault personally. His helmet is off, his white hair streaming. Every soldier can see him. The effect is electric. Mamluk warriors fight with ferocity born of desperation. This is not about conquest. This is about survival, about protecting families in Cairo, about preventing another Baghdad. They crash into the disorganized Mongol ranks like a hammer striking an anvil. Steel meets steel. Men scream, horses scream, blood sprays across limestone rocks. The Mamluks have advantages here that the Mongols do not fully understand yet. Their horses have iron shoes. They can charge downhill over rocky terrain without hesitation, without slipping. The Mongol horses, with cracked and bruised hooves from days of traveling over limestone, move more slowly, more carefully. They stumble on loose rocks. Their riders cannot execute the rapid maneuvers that normally give Mongols their edge. The heavier Mamluk cavalry, mounted on larger horses, bowl over the lighter Mongol horsemen in the confined space. This is not the open steppe where Mongol mobility dominates. This is close quarters brutality. And in close quarters, weight and armor matter. The battle becomes a grinding melee. Kitbuka, trapped in the middle of the chaos, finally understands what has happened. He has been outmaneuvered, outthought, led into a killing zone by an enemy he underestimated. But he is a Mongol general. He has faced desperate situations before. He rallies his best cavalry. Break through the western flank. Fight our way out. Mongol discipline reasserts itself in pockets. Veteran warriors form into wedges. They charge the Mamluk western line with coordinated fury, and they succeed. The western flank buckles. The Mongols punch through. For a moment it looks like they might escape the trap, might regroup outside the valley and turn this disaster into a fighting retreat. This is the critical moment of the battle. If the Mongols break through and escape, they remain a viable fighting force. They can retreat to Syria, call for reinforcements, return with overwhelming numbers. Kutuz sees the danger. He is on the eastern slope. The breakthrough is happening on the west. He is in the wrong position. Every instinct tells him to stay where he is, to command from a safe distance, to let his subordinates handle the crisis. Instead, he does something that defines his entire life in a single action. He spurs his horse directly toward the breakthrough, riding across the valley floor, riding into the most dangerous part of the battlefield. His bodyguards try to stop him. "My Sultan, you cannot," but he is already gone, racing toward the collapsing western flank, his white hair unmistakable, his face exposed. No helmet. Mamluk soldiers see him coming, see their Sultan riding into the teeth of the enemy, risking everything. The psychological effect is instantaneous. Soldiers who were beginning to fall back suddenly hold their ground. Fresh troops charge forward to support their Sultan. The wavering line stiffens. Kutuz crashes into the Mongol breakthrough with his bodyguard. Swords swinging, men dying on both sides. He is not a young man, 45 years old, but he fights like a demon. A Mongol warrior swings a mace at his head. Kutuz blocks with his shield. The impact nearly unseats him. He counters with a sword thrust that catches the Mongol in the throat. Another enemy charges. Kutuz's horse rears and kicks. The Mongol horse goes down. All around him, the battle rages. Steel on steel. Screams, blood, chaos. But the line holds. The Mongol breakthrough is contained, pushed back. The trap remains closed. Kitbuka, watching from his position, sees his escape route collapse. He realizes with cold certainty that this battle is lost. But there is still one thing a Mongol general can do, one final act. He can die fighting. Kitbuka rallies his remaining cavalry, perhaps 3,000 men still in fighting condition. He forms them into a final charge. They will not escape. They will not surrender. They will die like Mongols, taking as many enemies with them as possible. "For the Khan!" Kitbuka roars. "For the Empire!" The Mongol veterans charge one last time. It is magnificent, futile, heroic. They crash into the Mamluk center. The fighting becomes savage, hand to hand, no quarter given, none asked. Kitbuka's horse is struck by 3 arrows. The animal staggers, falls. Kitbuka is thrown to the ground. He rises immediately, sword in hand, blood streaming from a cut on his forehead. Mamluk soldiers surround him, 10 men, 20. He kills 2 before they overwhelm him. They drag him down, pin him, disarm him. An officer recognizes the quality of his armor. This one is important. Take him alive. They bind his hands and bring him before Kutuz. The Sultan sits on his horse, breathing hard. His sword is notched, his armor dented, but he is alive. Kitbuka is brought forward and forced to his knees. The 2 men look at each other, general to general, warrior to warrior. Kutuz speaks first. You have shed so much blood wrongfully, ended the lives of champions and dignitaries, overthrown ancient dynasties. Now you have finally fallen into a snare yourself. Kitbuka's response is immediate, cold, defiant. If I am killed by your hand, I consider it to be God's will, not yours. Do not be deceived by this event for one moment. When the news of my death reaches Hulagu Khan, the ocean of his wrath will boil over. From Azerbaijan to the gates of Egypt, the earth will quake with the hooves of Mongol horses. His eyes are hard as stones. You have won one battle. You have not won the war. Kutuz stares at him, then nods slowly. Perhaps you are right, the Sultan says quietly. Perhaps Hulagu will return with 100,000 men. Perhaps we will all die screaming. He leans forward in his saddle. But not today. Today the invincible empire has learned to bleed. He signals to his guards, execute him. They behead Kitbuka on the battlefield. His head is wrapped and prepared for transport to Cairo. The Mongol general dies as he lived, unbroken, defiant to the end. With their commander dead, the remaining Mongol forces collapse entirely. Those who can flee north, racing back towards Syria. But they are pursued relentlessly. And here is where the terrain exacts its final toll. Fleeing cavalry on exhausted horses with damaged hooves, trying to escape across rocky ground while pursued by fresh Mamluk cavalry on shod horses. It is not a retreat. It is a slaughter. The Mongols rally briefly at the town of Baisan, 8 miles north. They try to make a stand, but they are overwhelmed. By sunset, the Mongol army that marched into the Jezreel Valley has been destroyed. Estimates vary, but modern historians believe at least 5,000 Mongols died. Another 4,000 were captured. Only a few thousand escaped north. The Mamluk casualties are significant too, perhaps 1,200 dead. But these are acceptable losses because the impossible has happened. A Mongol army has been decisively defeated in open battle, and the survivors are running. For the first time in 54 years, the Mongol advance has been permanently stopped. Kutuz stands on the battlefield as the sun sets. Around him, the wounded are being tended. The dead are being collected for burial. Muslim dead will be buried with prayers. Christian auxiliaries will receive their rites. Even Mongol dead will be treated with respect. Baibars approaches. His armor is dented, blood-stained, but he is alive. The 2 men embrace, brothers in arms, survivors of the impossible. We did it, Kutuz says quietly. We actually did it. You did it, Baibars replies, when you charged the breakthrough, when you removed your helmet. That is what won this battle. Kutuz shakes his head. No, you won this battle when you studied the rocks beneath your feet, when you understood that horseshoes matter more than swords. They stand together in silence, watching the sun sink below the hills. What happens now? Baibars asks. Now we send Kitbuka's head to Cairo. We let the world know that the Mongols can be beaten, and then we march north. North? Damascus, Aleppo, all of Syria. The Mongols are broken here. We do not give them time to recover. Within days, the Mamluks march north and retake Damascus. Within a month, Aleppo is liberated. Syria, which had been under Mongol control for only a few months, returns to Muslim hands. The news spreads across the medieval world like wildfire. In Cairo, there are celebrations in the streets. In Baghdad's ruins, in captured Damascus, everywhere the Mongols have conquered, people begin to whisper. Maybe the empire is not invincible. Maybe resistance is possible. But here is where the story takes its darkest turn. October 24th, 1260, 7 weeks after Ain Jalut. Qutuz is returning to Cairo with his victorious army. They stop to hunt in a forest near the town of Salihiyah. It is a celebration, a moment of relaxation after weeks of campaigning. Qutuz rides with a small group, 10 men, trusted officers. Among them is Baibars. They pursue deer through the trees, laughing, enjoying the simple pleasure of the hunt. And then Baibars falls back. Lets Qutuz ride ahead. The Sultan does not notice. He is focused on the hunt. Baibars draws his bow. He has practiced this shot 10,000 times. He could make it in his sleep. He aims at Qutuz's back. For a moment he hesitates. This man saved his life. This man made him a general. This man trusted him. But Baibars remembers the promise. Syria, governorship, power. And he remembers Qutuz saying, "Wait, not yet. You need more experience." The promise broken or postponed. It amounts to the same thing. Baibars releases the arrow. It strikes Qutuz between the shoulder blades. The Sultan lurches forward in his saddle, cries out. 5 other officers, co-conspirators, emerge from the trees. They surround the wounded Sultan, swords drawn. Qutuz turns his horse, looks at Baibars, blood spreading across his tunic. "Ben, why?" Baibars' face is stone. "You promised me freedom. You gave me orders. I needed time to..." But the other conspirators do not let him finish. They strike. Multiple sword blows, ensuring death. Qutuz falls from his horse. The man who defeated the Mongols, the man who saved Islamic civilization, the man who stood bareheaded in the face of empire, dead in a forest, killed by his own general. Baibars dismounts, stands over the body. His eyes are wet, but his voice is steady. "I am sorry, my Sultan, but I have been a slave too long." Baibars returns to the camp. He claims Qutuz died in a hunting accident, an unfortunate fall from his horse. Some believe him, some do not. The 5 co-conspirators who helped kill Qutuz watch Baibars carefully. They know the truth. They are complicit. But they also know that if they speak, they die. Baibars meets with them privately. Qutuz died serving Egypt. That is the story. Anyone who says otherwise is a traitor to the realm. The message is clear. Silence or death. Within days, Baibars is proclaimed the new Sultan of Egypt. The army celebrates. The man who planned the victory at Ain Jalut, the brilliant general, the hero. But in the back of the funeral procession, an old soldier watches with knowing eyes. He was Qutuz's bodyguard for 20 years. He saw the arrow wound. He knows what arrows from behind look like. He says nothing. What can one old soldier do against the new Sultan? But he remembers, and he teaches his sons to remember. Some truths are too dangerous to speak, but they do not die. They bury Qutuz in a simple grave outside Cairo. No grand monument, no elaborate tomb. Baibars personally places the shroud over the body. His hands do not shake. "You were a great Sultan," he says quietly, when no one else can hear. "But you promised me freedom and gave me orders. I have been a slave long enough." He covers Qutuz's face. "Forgive me, or do not." It changes nothing. Years later, travelers passing Qutuz's grave will report a strange thing. No matter how dry the season, there are always wildflowers growing there, red poppies, as if the earth itself remembers. Some say it is God's judgment on Baibars. Others say it is simply coincidence. Baibars, when told of this, says nothing, but he never visits the grave again. Baibars rules Egypt for 17 years, 1260 to 1277, and he is brilliant. He defeats subsequent Mongol invasions. In 1277, Mongol forces briefly occupy Damascus again. Baibars drives them out. In 1303, 23 years after Ain Jalut, the Mamluks defeat another major Mongol invasion at the Battle of Marj al-Safar. After this defeat, the Mongols essentially give up on conquering Egypt and the Levant. Ain Jalut has marked the high water mark of Mongol expansion westward. They will never cross that line again. Baibars also completes the expulsion of the Crusaders from the Holy Land. Acre falls in 1291. After nearly 200 years, the Crusader dream dies. The Mamluk Sultanate will rule Egypt and the Levant for over 250 years. One of the longest-lasting Muslim dynasties in history. All of this is Baibars' legacy, but so is the murder of Qutuz. In 1277, Baibars dies. Some sources say from poison, others say natural causes. He is 49 years old. Before he dies, he dictates a final statement to his scribes. I have ruled justly. I have defended Islam. I have built mosques and hospitals. I have protected the weak and punished the wicked. A pause. Then, I have also done things I regret, things that haunt my sleep. But I did them because I believed they were necessary. Whether God agrees, I will learn soon enough. That is as close as he ever comes to confessing the murder. Today, if you visit the site of the Battle of Ain Jalut, you will find agricultural fields, orchards. The Ain Harad National Park in northern Israel. There is no grand monument, no museum, no gift shop selling replica swords. The exact location of the battle is actually somewhat uncertain because medieval chroniclers were not precise about coordinates. But the spring is still there. The hills still surround the valley. The rocks are still limestone, still sharp. If you stand on the slopes of Mount Gilboa and look down at the Jezreel Valley, you can see what Qutuz saw on that September morning in 1260. A valley floor that would tempt any cavalry general, hills perfect for an ambush, and the ground itself waiting to become a weapon. So what does Ain Jalut mean? Why does it matter 765 years later? First, it teaches us that every empire has limits. The Mongols conquered from the Pacific to Eastern Europe, the largest contiguous empire in human history, seemingly invincible. But their system was optimized for the Eurasian steppe, endless grassland, soft ground. Take them out of that environment, and the advantages that made them unstoppable became liabilities. They found their western limit in a rocky valley in Palestine, not through superior courage or numbers, but because the ground itself rejected them. Second, it teaches us that knowledge matters more than strength. Baibars won because he had walked those hills, because he understood that horseshoes matter, that grass is finite, that terrain can be a weapon. That local practical knowledge was worth more than 1,000 years of tactical brilliance. Third, it teaches us that history is human, complicated, messy. Qutuz deserves to be remembered as a hero. He risked everything. He won the battle that saved Islamic civilization. His reward was to be murdered 7 weeks later by his own general. Baibars deserves to be remembered as a brilliant strategist. He defended Egypt for 17 years, but he was also an assassin. Both things are true. Neither cancels out the other. This is not a fairy tale with clear heroes and villains. This is history. And history does not offer neat endings. There is one final lesson, the most important one. The ground beneath your feet can matter more than the sword in your hand. We like to believe that victory goes to the strong, the brave, the righteous. Sometimes it does, but often victory goes to those who understand the environment, who recognize the constraints, who see opportunities that others miss. Baibars looked at rocks and saw a weapon. He looked at grass and saw a vulnerability. He looked at a narrow valley and saw a killing ground. That vision, that understanding, changed the course of history. Not because he was the strongest warrior, not because he had the largest army, but because he understood the battlefield better than anyone else. The Mongols conquered the largest land empire in history, but they learned at Ain Jalut that there is always ground where even the greatest army stumbles. Every strength has a weakness. Every advantage has a cost. Every empire finds terrain where it cannot tread. On September 3, 1260, the terrain of the Jezreel Valley decided the fate of civilizations. The rocks beneath Bibar's feet became the weapon that saved the world. Sometimes, terrain is destiny.